March Layer 7 office hours. For today, our topic is Gemfire, and it's going to be presented by Chris Waun. Real quick, before we get started, just some housekeeping things. You are all hard muted right now, but at the end of the presentation, I will unmute you so that if you choose to come off mute and wait until the end to ask your questions verbally, you can. But during the presentation, should you want to type your questions in the panel, you can do that as well. I'll keep an eye on it, as Chris is presenting, I'll keep an eye on questions that are coming in. So you can do it either way you choose. But, thank you, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris now.
Welcome to March's office hours. My name is Chris Waun, and today I'm going to go over our Gemfire integration along with a new Gemfire integration, along with Layer 7 API security. The agenda today is first I'm going to kind of recap what is Gemfire. We did have a deep dive on this a couple of months ago, but I just want to kind of give you a recap of what it is, the benefits from using Gemfire over Redis, and then finally the licensing. How do you gain access to Tanzu's Gemfire? There's a couple of different deployment models, and I'm going to go through the embedded and the external in a little bit more detail independently. And then finally, I'm going to finish with a demo of switching from Redis to Gemfire in a Kubernetes environment. So first, what is Gemfire? Gemfire is a high-speed distributed in-memory data and compute grid that is composed of both locators and servers. Those servers are what are actually hosting the data in different regions across the world and handle those read-write operations as they get requests from Layer 7. The locator is doing exactly what it says it's doing. It's locating the data. If data is not available, it will input it into the server with the lowest latency and highest throughput so that it's replicated as quickly as possible to be available for the next API call. This gives you that high availability and fault tolerance through replication in a synchronous fashion. This can help to reduce your load on backend databases and also increase and reduce that latency for those sensitive API operations. How is this different? Tanzu emphasizes data consistency while maintaining high performance and availability with that synchronous replication that does not exist in Redis. It improves support for distributed caching and offers better performance across distributed environments because Tanzu Gemfire can be replicated across all of its servers around the world in just mere milliseconds. It's extremely fast. It's easily extendable to advanced architectures, so you can connect to the same. As I'll show you, it's pretty easy to change from Redis to Gemfire in both Kubernetes and in a container and an appliance deployment. And lastly, this is a one-vendor enterprise support. The solution is backed by Broadcom, and you're going to get the same Tanzu Gemfire support that you would when you open up a Layer 7 ticket. So how do you gain access to this? This has been since Tanzu Gemfire is a completely separate and distinct product. We have included entitlement for you to gain up to 32 cores of non-production and 32 cores of production for your use. This is a total maximum, regardless of the number of Layer 7 bundle licenses that you have access to. Whether you have 5 or 500, you're still maxing out at 64 cores. Additional Gemfire licenses can be are required if more cores are needed. And out with these 64 cores, you're limited to only Layer 7 connections. Any third-party applications would have to integrate through Layer 7 to take advantage of Gemfire's quick capabilities. This can be removed if you purchase additional licenses, and your account team will be more than happy to help you with that. So how is Gemfire used with Layer 7? First, we have our embedded Gemfire deployment. And as you can see, there's a little bit of difference between the OVA and the containers. The OVA is everything. You're going to have a Gemfire cache and locator on every single one of your appliances. But in the container deployment, the locator is going to be a completely separate pod, while that server is going to be maintained on that gateway pod. You do get distributed caching with this, but we do want you to note that you are using gateway resources to run your cache. So it's not really good for use at scale or in a highly in a high use production environment because you can start to see some performance degradation. So embedded Gemfire comes with gateway version 11.1.3 or greater. It's enabled via that system.properties or YAML file, and it's mainly designed with a few message replay and SAML assertions on the embedded side. You can still use the circuit breaker, throughput quota, rate limit, and key value storage, but as I mentioned just a minute ago, performance issues can arise because you're sharing gateway resources. Even though you get that distributed cache, you're taking away precious resources from that gateway. In an external Gemfire deployment, this is going to be more what it looks like. You have your individual gateways, your east and your west, in this case with a common shared backend app, but both gateways are going to be connecting to an external Gemfire locator, which has all of the number of pods and servers that are available to it. Note this is going to unlock you that it's removing that from the gateways itself, so you're not really worried. It's not stealing any of those system resources. The external Gemfire is the same gateway version. There are some things that need to be done on both the gateway and the Gemfire instances. There is a gateway Gemfire extension.zip file that includes some jar files. The security jar is mainly needed for that user authentication between Layer7 and Gemfire when you do the initial setup. The functions jar is only required if you want to run the apply circuit breaker, throughput quota, rate limit, and key value storage assertions. But it's best practice that even if your use cases aren't needing those in the current moment, that even when you do your initial install, that you still install the functions jar, because down the line, some use cases may require them, and it's best that you don't have to go back and do that again. No functions jars are needed. The functions jar is not needed if you're just planning to use that message replay and SAML assertions that we talked about a minute ago and with the embedded. A few things have changed with the external Gemfire in 11.2.1. We've enhanced documentation for Gemfire deployed in Kubernetes, and we've also come out with some new jar files, which I'll talk about in just a second. This has also increased automation with both operators. The Kubernetes Gemfire operator deployment uses the 11.2.1 jar file regardless of gateway version. So if you're deploying the Gemfire operator, even if you're on 11.1.3, you still need to use the 11.2.1 jar files. But if you're using the on-premise version or anything else, you can use the jar files that match your version. Older jar files and newer jar files can be used interchangeably as long as you're on other Gemfire deployments that are not the Kubernetes operator. Now for my demo. So everything I have here is deployed in Kubernetes with Helm. I'm going to start with Redis as our enterprise caching tool, and then I'm going to quickly switch over to Gemfire. During that switchover, the pods do need to be rebooted. So while that's doing that, I'm going to quickly go through the couple of different ways on how you can access Gemfire from a management kind of console, from a management console standpoint. We have a command line. It uses gfish. That's a way for you to, using it via command line, interact with it. There's an open API spec, so you can actually manage and do things outside of Gemfire with that API spec. And there's a management console. And this management console gives you a lot of access to a bunch of different things around the Gemfire deployment, and even has some logging and monitoring capabilities. Do note that the management console does need the open API spec to run. So just be aware of that if you decide to use that in the future. Okay, so now we have a working Redis dashboard. So there's nothing in this at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and this is my gateway one. I'm just going to reload the page. You will notice that the requests will kind of go down a little bit, but then the counter ID changes. This is because both Redis and Gemfire suffer from an aggressive token refresh algorithm that quickly is refilling that token bucket almost as quickly as we can deplete it. So it's just something to be aware about. The quotas, you can see here that the quota will continue. And if I go over to gateway 2, the quota will continue to go up until we hit the maximum. And again, that quota will now be in Redis. Finally, we have our key value store. This is actually storing the actual HTML from this page. That's why you'll see this Redis and Gateway 1 on here. And if I go over to Gateway 2, this says get Redis on Gateway 2. This will now change to Gateway 1 because it's pulling that cache from, or it's pulling that HTML page from the from Redis. There's the actual page. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to delete this, or excuse me, not delete. I'm actually going to change the deployment to use Gemfire. I'll just keep that running so we can see when those pods come up. Okay, now that that's there, I will go back to the management console. So here you can see all of the clusters that you have available to you. So you could have multiple clusters. I just have the one, so you're just going to see the demo cluster here. Here's where you would come in to add more clusters, import and export different connections. The other thing I wanted to show was the topology explorer. So if you have a cluster that's built out in a more robust manner, you would see more here. Since I just have the demo cluster, that's all you're going to see. And finally, there's a world map. If you have it set up to show you where all of your clusters reside on the map, you will actually see it up on here, and it'll show you everything on where that resides. But if I come in here to the demo cluster, you can see here there's I just have one locator, but I have two servers, and you can see the utilization load, some metrics. Same thing with the monitoring. I haven't done anything, so you're not going to see much of anything, but you can see how fast this is. This is in picoseconds, so it's very quick, in nanoseconds. So it's extremely fast on how your data gets pulled. If you have multiple region or everything in Gemfire is the tables are considered regions, so it's a little bit confusing with some of the cloud nomenclature. But you can see here we have our counter, key value store, rate limiter, any configurations that you might need. So here's our jar file and how those are installed. Here's gfish. This is that command line editor. It's the exact same if you were to go through the pod to get here. But here, if I come in here, I can go list regions, and you can see all those. If I type in help, it'll give you a list of all the commands, and it's an extremely long list. So there's a lot you can do with the gfish command line. I did mention that you can do logs, so you can see the logs here based on what's going on and get more information there. And then finally, the data explorer. So this is where you could come in and actually see what is in your Gemfire instance or in your servers and cluster. So right now I won't have anything because there's nothing there. At this point, our Gemfire should be up and running. So now if I come back here, this will now say Gemfire on gateway 2. And then if I come over here, this will also change because it's pulling this HTML from cache. And if I come into here and do browse, there's that value. So I did mention the open API spec. So here's just kind of the overall look of it. If I come in here and come down to, list all regions, this is where you can see what regions you have available to you. And there's those regions as well. There's ways to be able to query and get data out of this, but it's a little bit more convoluted, and then I don't want to show it, make it more confusing. But the main thing is you can do it in the management console as well. And it's already kicked me out. The last thing I'll show you is that aggressive token refresh algorithm. You can see it's happening here again. That counter ID is changing as those tokens get refreshed. And there's those tokens. So there was a few questions and answers from the March office hours. What are the main benefits from using Gemfire over Redis? You do get that Broadcom support. The initial 64 cores do come with your bundled SKU license. There's no additional cost. And then also that synchronous replication, and there's that table in the earlier slide that you'll have access to later on. And you can review more in depth, show quite a bit of the different differentiations. Next, performance difference between Gemfire and Redis. The team did do performance evaluations, obviously, when they were doing the integration. Some things they found Redis was a little bit faster. Some things they found Gemfire was a little bit faster on. But the key thing with performance evaluations is when you get it installed in your environment is running your own performance, doing your performance testing, because every environment is different and it can act completely different than how we do it in a lab. So just be aware that when you run performance testing, you might get different results. The limitations of using embedded Gemfire are just that. We talked about those a little bit earlier. It's not for use at scale with the key value store, rate limiting, quotas, basically your SLA enforcement, because those Gemfire instances are using gateway resources while they're running. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. So just be aware that if you do run performance testing using embedded Gemfire for your SLA enforcement, you're not going to see some of the performance enhancements that you might have been expecting. The last question was, use Gemfire for key and secret replacement for OTK. You can do this, but only using the external Gemfire. You cannot use the embedded Gemfire. And with that, I would like to thank everybody once again for coming to the March office hours, and hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
All right. I don't think we have any other questions, Chris, and I'm not seeing you come in the panel. So I think we're good. Again, thanks everyone for joining. We will be sending out the PDF version. And as a reminder, the recording will be on YouTube. We have the Layer7 YouTube channel. If you don't know where that is or have trouble, feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm Pamela Deason, Marketing Manager for Layer7. And I just want to thank everyone for joining, and we'll see you in April.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.